Hi there. I'm back without a picture because the camera isn't working at the moment, but thought I'd get these posted anyway. So, wanted to do a few quick things on assessing organizational performance. And as you can see with this opening slide, really the question we're asking when we're talking about assessing performance is determining the criteria. Right? How do we keep score? How do we know how a company is doing? Um, I might argue that before we think about the actual criteria we're going to use, we might want to think about what it is we're trying to accomplish. And for that, we have to think about the goals and objectives that we're setting for the firm, in line with, we hope, the strategy, that is, the place that we're trying to get to, the position, the competitive advantage we're trying to gain. And if we do that, then we can try to think about what we need to accomplish. And I kind of like the question, how do you know how you did if you don't know what you were trying to do? So, when we set goals and objectives, we hold people accountable. And in that regard, it makes more sense to make specific goals, that is, a 10% return on investment, growing sales by 5%, whatever it might be, rather than just grow, make a profit, etc. As well, we have to think about the fact that when we set goals, they're inevitably going to be goals up at the highest level and then goals on down. And generally, if you achieve the lower level goals, if you've done it right, you're going to achieve the higher level goals. That is, we don't just start by saying, oh, we're going to earn a 10% return on investment this year. Instead, we break that down and say, if we do A, B, and C, then we should earn a 10% return on investment. We'll talk about that more in just a second. Okay? So, we're going to set goals, we're going to set objectives. What area do we need to set these goals and objectives in? Well, the ones we normally see, or at least the first ones that tend to come to mind, are the financial outcomes. Things like profitability, total sales revenue, maybe if you're down into the numbers, some kind of efficiency measures. There are also market outcomes. We hear businesses talk about their share of the market, how competitive they are, etc. But one hopes that you also will think about various internal outcomes. That is, are you developing your people? Are you learning? Are you innovating? Are you improving the business processes, etc.? In that regard, something like the balanced scorecard is a good tool to help you use. It helps you think about the fact that it's not just the financial results, but that those are a function of things like satisfying your customers and your other stakeholders, improving regularly your internal business processes, and your overall what they call the organizational capacity. That is, your knowledge, your innovation, the way you do things. And that all of these, again, should be built on your strategy, how you're trying to compete, and the things that lead to those. That said, the numbers still do take on prominence when we're talking about business. So, the ones shown here on the screen are various profitability ratios that you really ought to make sure that you're comfortable with. Various measures of profitability, margins, etc. But there's a lot more than these. I have posted in the readings folder a little primer on financial analysis that I wrote. And unless you're comfortable already with the numbers, some of you may be, some of you may not, I'd really encourage you to read through that primer and maybe even take the little self-test that I have posted there to see where you are when it comes to the numbers. You also have to remember that those first set of numbers and ratios we were just looking at are kind of high-level final outcome numbers. All right? It's important to know, though, where those numbers come from. What do the numbers reveal about how the company is making or spending its money, the nature of its operations, etc.? Well, ratios certainly are helpful in doing that, but it's also helpful if we dig a little deeper into the ratios. So, looking at things like disaggregating a profit measure, in this case return on capital employed. That's actually a function of return on sales and sales in relation to the capital that's employed. Each of these in turn are dependent on a number of other things. You'll notice the things down on the right. Depreciation, SG&A or overhead as a relation to sales, etc. All of those are things that we can actually do something about, actions we can actually take. If we do those things well, then we ought to have a good return on sales and sales to capital employed, which ought to leave us with a good return on capital. Likewise on this slide, kind of like this one, I've actually used it out of the grant book in other areas because it drops it all the way down to the department and team. You look to the right side here, and again, it's showing you the specific things that you need to work on in order to ultimately end up with good profit numbers overall for the firm. In fact, I knew of a company one time in talking to or listening to a presentation by the CEO who said that they'd figured out that if they kept employees feeling good about all the things they needed to do their job, they could actually track that number, and in the next period would find that customer satisfaction had gone up. If the employees felt good and had everything they needed, they could deal better with the customers, and that the following period, after customer satisfaction was up, they would see sales go up, and after that they would see profit go up. So they had really broken this down and seen that it's really those specific things that matter. Take care of those and you will take care of the higher level numbers.